We have somebody that switched their career recently from a hairdresser. But in the background, she'd been started studying AAT, put herself through the first levels of the zero, and she's been with us almost 12 months, and she's phenomenal.
Hey Sean, how you doing?
Good, thanks, Ben. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Firstly, as ever, thank you for making a bit of time. Just to remind people why we're doing this. So today we're going to be climbing the ladder with Sean Daniel. Essentially, the reason we're doing this is to understand your journey, Sean, how you've got to where you have, what kind of challenges that you face, and the whole idea of producing this content is so that we can share it with our network and hopefully give them a bit of food for thought and actually help someone on their way and understanding what it takes to get to a position like you're in at the moment and all the headaches and frustrations I'm sure that's come with it. Well, for people who don't know Sean Daniels, Managing Director for a company called Clear Vision Management. These guys are an accountancy firm, but actually a very, very interesting business and like to work in quite a modern way, I would say, from working with these guys myself. So just to start, Sean, would you mind just telling me firstly about what you do and a little bit about your company?
So, as you've already said, Managing Director, Clear Vision Financial Management Limited. We are an accountancy business, essentially, very much focused on my route through to where we are today, which is very heavily management accounts focused. We rely on that an awful lot for our client base and the services that we offer. Most of my stuff on a day-to-day basis is none of that anymore. It's a lot about running the business, a lot of business development, quite a bit of oversight of what the staff are doing, obviously, and the team, but also for some of what the clients do. Because I've had that experience within companies up to FD level already, I do a lot of strategic work for our clients at FD level. It's quite a different role, certainly less number-based, more strategy-based these days.
And it's a case of wearing loads of different hats by the sounds of things, isn't it?
Yeah, at least 17, I'd say.
And I suppose out of the hats that you do wear, what ones would you say you probably enjoy the most?
I think most of all, it's got to be the strategic side of things.
Well, like actually getting out to see people, or a strategic side for your business, and like how you're going to grow, that sort of thing.
It kind of rubs off each other. So definitely on the client side, but what we do on there and what we experience there, we can draw on our own stuff. So as you know, we're quite entrepreneurial, as we've had discussed before.
I can vouch for that, yeah.
And it just throws a different element into the mix of how we do ththings. But the strategic side of things is what I enjoy the most, definitely.
Fine. And how about the things you enjoy the least?
Accounting?
Yeah. No.
I tell you what the hardest thing to deal with is, and you're not taught this in any way whatsoever, is dealing with all of the personalities that you have in your team. And it's taken a long time to learn how to deal with that. It's not that I don't like doing it at all. I actually really enjoy dealing with people. It can be really, really tricky.
What I find is actually there's no one size fits all typically. So it's not like you go, right, this is my management style, take it or leave it. It has to kind of mold slightly depending on who the team is and what motivates them. And it can be quite complicated compared to strategy in comparison, I guess. So just remind us, with Clear Vision, how long have you been the managing director for Clear Vision?
I started Clear Vision 9 years ago, I think. 2021 will be our 10th year. To be fair, the first 4 years was just me selling my time. Then it got a bit more serious and we had a snowball effect. It just grew and grew and grew. And we developed it along the time. So I suppose really being the MD would probably have been after year 4, 5 and 6, much more developing that role. It's much more client focused still at that point, less so now, and very much been formalized over the last sort of 2 or 3 years.
And I suppose if you were to compare then, I suppose your time at Clear Vision versus kind of your time before working at Clear Vision and starting up a business as such, how would you say kind of working in a practice environment? I use that term loosely because I think it doesn't give you guys enough justice, if I'm honest, but how do you feel that compares to being in industry and in that commercial sector, some people might argue it's called?
It is very different. I think the thing that I noticed the most was the nature of those two kind of experiences. So very much in industry, it is quite circular every single month. You've got to do month end by this time. You then got to do your pre-month end after a certain number of weeks. You've got to report and what have you. And it's the same month in, month out. It's great to learn that, but when you're in practice, and it's weird that you use the term practice because I know that I mean, my views on it is it feels a bit weird to call our business practice. No 2 days are the same. And we've taken some of what we've experienced in the past in terms of how we work with clients on their month end and stuff like that. But, you just throw things every single day, almost every half day or almost every hour, something else. So they're the two biggest things. Industry, you have a very kind of set process. Certainly what we do
A bit more routine.
in how we work, it looks like chaos sometimes, but it's a great experience. It really is. It challenges you every single day in different ways.
And what then made you go from, and we'll kind of dig into it in a moment, but what made you go from doing that kind of working in, for these companies to then pimping out your time essentially and then creating a business off the back of it and growing to what you have? What made you do that?
Well, do you know what? I had the last place I was employed at, and I'm obviously not going to name them, I hated it. And I wanted to resign. And my wife said, no, don't. Got to a position where I was no longer employed. And I thought, wow, what should I do now? So I took 3 months off and I did some crazy things, relatively crazy things, but I was buying and selling cars, great fun. And then I thought a little bit more seriously about it. I thought, okay, so is it really what I want to do? What do I want to do? Do I want to go back to employment? I thought, no, let's just give it a go and see. So it wasn't a conscious choice, but it was a choice of saying, well, okay, I really need to do something. Let's use what I've done and let's just build up a portfolio of clients and go from there. It wasn't a conscious decision to go and make a practice, build a practice and get X amount of employees and whatever turnover and what have you. It was, okay, I really need to earn some money. How am I best positioned to do it?
It's awesome. And it's really interesting you say that because we're seeing that quite a lot on the market at the moment. Obviously, a lot of people are out of work. Yeah. So what they're doing is going, right, okay, well, I'm flying away or I'm speaking to whatever. And actually maybe not having the results through nothing that they can really help. It's just the way the market is at the moment. So I know quite a lot of people who have just gone, do you know what, I'm going to just do it myself. With your role there, obviously you don't have to give us like company names and stuff like that, but just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got from being a little newbie in finance, if you like, to being an FD. And if you don't mind, just kind of giving a bit of an idea in terms of what sectors as well.
To paint the picture a little bit more, I actually did a degree in hotel and catering management. So my very first interview with a recruitment consultant said, we're never going to get you a job in finance. And I said, well, seriously? It's a business studies degree, really, just with examples in hotel and catering. It's fine. So I managed to get a job, and my first job was a costing clerk for a manufacturing business in Winchester, who is still around. And I was there about 3 years and went through some redundancies there. So within about 6 months, I was kind of pushed up from the costing clerk into an accounts assistant. And I learned some really, really good basic stuff there that is a foundation of how we work today. And that was 20 years ago. From there, wanted career progression, moved after about 3 years. I went to a software company as management accountant, I think it was. And that company was relatively small, but then it was purchased by a really large PLC. And I stayed there for about 2 years. The role really wasn't developing how I wanted it to. And I moved from there into, I think it was a financial controller role, but it was a fairly basic financial controller role in a financial services sector. And I was there a couple of years. Unfortunately, they went bust. And I went from there to a large PLC in one of the companies within a division. So it's quite far down the chain. Turnover was about 15 million, and met some real good challenges in that role, which were probably a little bit outside of my skill set at the time. But boy, did I learn a lot very quickly. Yeah. Went from there to a privately owned company as a wine wholesaler, roughly the same amount of turnover, but smaller in its whole big structure and stuff like that. And then after that, I bought a business. I bought my first business, which I had for about 18 months, not very long. Whole host of challenges in that, which didn't quite agree with me. So I sold that, and I overpaid on the way in and I lost money on the way out.
That was a great deal.
But I learned so much from that, which has stead me in absolute great stead this time. From there, I went to a facilities management company where I went in as FD right at the beginning of 2008 recession, just when everything was collapsing through the floor. And from there, I went to another facilities management company, which headhunted me, which was the biggest mistake ever. But you live and learn. And then from there, I started Clear Vision. So started small, lots of different industry sector experience. And I moved around quite a lot, really. The longest I was employed was 3 years, just over 3 years in the first role. And a lot of people look at that and think, oh, you just can't settle. And I just thought, well, hang on a minute, experience and growth, experience and growth, experience and growth. And so by the time I'm getting to those last positions where I was employed, it's like quite a lot of experience and growth. Lots of different things that you've dealt with, lots of different interactions, lots of different people, lots of different industry sectors.
And I really like that, because for what I tend to find in the market, and this is obviously me talking broadly, but finding quite often the market now is saying we're a manufacturing business, we only need manufacturing accountants, and we have to get there. And I kind of get it more so with manufacturing because, you know, you're dealing with widgets, if you like, or whatever. But it's really sector specific, the market, I find. And actually, it sounds to me that your breadth of experience from different sectors has actually been nothing but positive to take to your next role, rather than actually holding you back and having skills gaps.
Absolutely. And I think the reason for that is, you know, whichever sector you work in, you've got to sell stuff, you've got a cost of sale, you've got overheads to manage, you've got a balance sheet to manage, and your cash flow to manage. You know, if you're selling cars, or if you're selling financial services, or you're selling buildings, it's the same mix of stuff that makes that up. And it's turning your mind and attention and skill set to the specific nuances of a particular sector. It doesn't matter what that sector is, because you know that. You know, any accountant should know those kind of basic things that make up all of that.
Why did you get into finance, Sean? Like, what made? Because I know you also did your degree, and it was a bit of, like you say, a bit of a tangent. But what made you go, I think I'm going to make a living out of this?
I didn't want to work weekends.
What is that?
Yep.
You don't work weekends now, then?
Well, that's the thing. That's the kicker, isn't it? No, I mean, so I made the decision probably a year before I finished my degree that I didn't want to work in hotel and catering management, and I've worked in it for about 7 years. So I did a couple of years before going to uni, and I decided then that I didn't want to work in that sector because I didn't want to work weekends. I didn't know whether I was going to be a financial advisor or an accountant, and so I geared up my final year at uni to go into that sector. And then once I graduated, I kind of, you know, looked at the options at that point. So accountancy for me, it just became it came naturally through all of my studies and all of the stuff that I did within my roles, anything to do with that kind of sales and operating costs and budgeting and stuff like that. So I thought, well, okay, that's a sector for me. But genuinely, it was because I didn't want to work weekends.
Yeah. Do you think it was also like, you know, like some people, when it comes to like studying, they pick what they're good at or what they enjoy doing? Was that a case for that for you, or was it just a case of, if you look at my experience and my studies, it probably should go towards it? Was it that sort of thing, or?
I guess it was a mixture of both, to be honest, because by the time I knew that I wanted to follow a career in accounting, it was before I finished my degree, but I didn't know whether I wanted to go down the ACA route or the ACCA route or the CIMA route. And the interviewing process that I was having, it was almost going to be, well, okay, it depends which job I get, whether it's this route, or this route. And I don't know how many people will like this or agree with this, but I'm so happy that the first person that employed me was in industry and I followed the CIMA route. I was quite keen to go down an audit route, and, you know, in a big accountancy firm and stuff like that. And they turned me down because they didn't like my style. They didn't, all the aptitude tests, forget it. No, definitely can't be an auditor. And I was really unhappy about it at the time. And I thought, why? I'd be really good at this. And then I started in the manufacturing business, and then I met my first auditor, and I thought, it's clear now.
So, do you think then, Sean, with that, because I was just about to get on to the qualification piece, when I think of practice, I would normally think of ACA, ACCA, and I really, really like it when we do have to recruit, or you are recruiting. I love the fact that your CIMA is a real game changer, and I think it really does demonstrate to me how it is different, how the way that you guys run it is more that kind of advisory. And were you encouraged to do it? Did someone say, oh, you know, it's part and parcel with this role, or?
Don't actually remember. It probably came out in an interview process at the time, but it's 25 years ago, pretty much. But so I can't remember. But it was very clear that CIMA was the industry route, so to speak. I know my boss, who I'm still really good friends with, he was CIMA qualified. So it was probably, and actually the FD as well. So it was probably the fact that they had done that it was the right route to go down. Certainly, I must have been aware at the time that industry CIMA and practice ACCA and ACA. So it just felt the right thing for me. And I got a lot of enjoyment from what the businesses did and how they operated. And so I hadn't really felt that I would then move into practice or start a business.
I think it's also, I think it just makes your role interesting because it shows that you haven't got some fixed way of how it should work based on your last practice you spent loads of time in or whatever. So I think that's a good thing. So I suppose with your CIMA then, did you get that funded by the company? Did you say, no, I want to do this, I'll pay for it?
My employers paid for it. The first employer, I went through to the final year with them, and then the next employer paid in the final year or two, I can't remember. So it was paid by the employers. They paid for both of it.
When you were studying, Were you going to like a class?
I had some exemptions from my degree. I did a mixture, and I did traditional study at Southampton Institute at the time for the first year. That wasn't quite going as quickly as I wanted. So I then went to BPP and did their intensive courses at weekends. That didn't quite work out how I wanted for me to learn as quickly as I wanted to. I struggled with that second year, and I got a couple of fails and had to reset a couple of exams. So back to the third year, I went back to the Institute and did proper study 2 nights a week, I think it was. And that was the same for the final year. And then I got first time passes on all that lot.
How do you find working, doing numbers, and then after homework? How did you find balancing the both at the same time?
Well, let me put another little twist in there as well. So I got married straight when I graduated uni, and by the time I was in my third year, my first child was born. So I had work, study, and my daughter. So Meg was born in '99. That was just at the beginning of my third year. So third and fourth year. So it was difficult.
When it comes to perhaps doing like a formal qualification, let's just say we're talking about CIMA, ACCA or something like that. Do you think it actually matters how long it takes?
No, look, as far as I'm concerned, no, it doesn't bother me how people have got their qualifications or if they do have all those full qualifications, because whilst thrown into mix, you've got to consider AAT. So we've got a lot of our team members going through the AAT route. From what we see from taking over accounts from other people who may be fully qualified, who may be in practice for years, the work could be shocking, absolutely shocking, or the client's not getting best advice. So not only is the qualification important, there's a lot more that's also important. The knowledge of the individual, the technical capabilities, how to deal with clients, how to speak to clients, how to think outside of the box. So the things that are critical for me is the experience they've got in how they've got to where they've arrived at. So as you know, I think, can't remember how many staff I've got now at the moment, 14 or 15. I think one of those has only ever worked in practice. Everybody else has worked in industry and has come from industry sectors, for some really big companies as well. And that experience is much more relevant to us because of how we do what we do and why we do what we do.
And I guess with that in mind then, because I know AAT is a great qualification, CIMA, ACCA, all those are great too. But how important do you think doing any sort of finance qualification, whether it's AAT or whatever, how important do you think that is?
I do think it's really important. I genuinely do. Whether it's AAT, whether it's more further on from that, doesn't necessarily matter so much. But I think AAT at the very least, because you learn stuff in there that is really, really basic stuff. What you could, certainly what we found is where people haven't got any qualification, unfortunately, they don't always know what they don't know. And we've had to unpick terrible messes, or the way that they treat their clients, or the way that they put together accounts has just been wrong. And, it's not great. It doesn't put a great reflection on the industry as a whole. So I think the qualification is absolutely really, really important. But I'm not too fussy. If they've got AAT and a load of experience and that's really great and they're the right kind of fit for our team, then that's brilliant. They are ACA, okay. ACCA or CIMA, it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I suppose it's more of evidencing that this is a career, and like you say, if you don't know, you don't know sort of thing. And this will help with some of those areas by the sounds of it. We've done a few of these now, and I always ask the same question. Like when it comes to your qualification in CIMA, do you think you would have got to an FD in industry or to managing your own company without it?
I probably would have got to managing my own company without it. But I would imagine the company would be a shadow of what it is. It certainly wouldn't be as perceived as well in the marketplace, and certainly to our clients, if I hadn't have gone through the route of qualification. Absolutely, I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
Well, what advice would you give someone? And it's really hard to answer this one given the climate at the moment. But just to typically speaking, like what advice would you give someone who wants to pursue a career in finance and maybe have the appetite to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think just consider where you want to go and how you want to get there. And so that might then determine which qualification route. I think qualification is really, really critical to do so, whether it's AAT or whether it's ACCA or whatever, whichever one it is. But just have a little think about whether it's that route you want to go down or this route you want to go down. And I think, personally, I think the CIMA route is excellent. Obviously, I would say that. But if you do go down that industry route, you're getting great experience at you're actually practical experience rather than sometimes theoretical experience, which you might get in the other routes.
And I guess I suppose from someone who's done that journey and kind of at where people are perhaps wanting to be, what would you say that, I suppose, in terms of the skills or aptitude as well, does it take to get to where you are now, do you think?
Cool, that's a really good one. I think you've got to be able to juggle lots and lots of balls. So you've got to be flexible to switch your attention on different things. I think that the biggest element is that you've got to be massively flexible. You've got to be quite sharp on what's going on and understand how different things are impacting. So, what's dragging the sales down? Is that because there's a salesperson that's not performing? Is it just the market sector's collapsed? Is it the wrong kind of product? Is there a competitor? What's impacting your cost of sales? Is it, your pricing in overseas has gone up because of whatever, foreign currency impact? Or is it that, there's a bottleneck in the factory and they can't get it out quick enough, so you're paying or higher fees to get things shipped in? So there's lots of different things that fit into that. And of course, when you're in industry, you're focused on that company. When you're in practice, there could be multiple versions of those kind of problems that you have. So you've got to have that ability to switch quickly between different things.
It also sounds to me, from what I've learned from this conversation, is it's also not being afraid to make mistakes or just to give it a bit of a go.
Oh, some of the mistakes I've made in the past are crazy.
Yeah, but I guarantee you're not making those same mistakes again. And I think that's from the story that you're telling me. From learning, you've learned so much from your mistakes, and that's actually helped you and grown and developed your business together.
I think it gives you a much better life experience for sure. I think you'd be much more satisfied by that.
But when you're hiring, what's more important, attitude or experience? Because this is really relevant for people who might be watching now, just generally.
Oh, definitely, it's definitely attitude. So we've taken on a few people recently, maybe a year experience, but it's the desire to succeed. We have somebody that switched their career recently from a hairdresser, and she early 20s, but in the background she'd been started studying AAT, put herself through the first levels of the zero, and she's been with us almost 12 months, and she's phenomenal. So it's about the attitude. Yeah, you can have someone that's really well qualified, got a lot of experience, but if they can't be bothered.
Yeah, all the hard work, to get along within the office, yeah.
So it's definitely about the attitude. Yeah, we've learned a lot about that over the past 12, 18 months.
I'm glad you say that. I think a lot of the better businesses, if I'm honest, are focused more around culture fit, because actually, even, from a finance perspective, even if we're talking about something like purchase ledger, one process for your company would be very different to another and another. So actually, there's always going to be training needed. It's about actually the person. So I'm glad you've hit that nail on the head. So lastly then, Sean, 3 stupid questions. They're not that stupid, but they're just a bit of fun. So if you didn't end up in finance, what would you be doing? I feel like you've kind of alluded to what this would be already. I think you'd be wheeling dealing, but this is your answer, not mine.
So the answer I said was I'll be a stripper.
Oh, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. How much money do you reckon you make doing that?
Well, I'd said I'd be a stripper because I'd have a much, much better physique. So that's it. But I think probably what I'd like to do, I'd probably own a bar. Like a bar and restaurant. I know they're going through tough times at the moment, but some of my favourite memories of when I was at uni, and prior to that was just having fun in bars, working in them and doing all sorts of silly things. So I'd probably own a bar somewhere.
Maybe your next business.
Definitely not. But I thought that was a funny answer at the party. So there you go.
Right. And I guess I quite like this question. This one isn't silly at all, but knowing what you know now, what would you tell younger Sean Daniels?
I think I would have told myself that whatever it is that you want to achieve in life, and you look around you and you see other people and you think, it's a very, very long race, and it's only ever with yourself. So ignore what other people may or may not have during that journey.
If you could invite any 3 people to like a dinner party, dead or alive, me not included, or Matt, who would you have?
Okay, it's funny this. There's a lot of popular things at the moment about American politics. I would definitely have Barack Obama. I mean, most of these people are inspirational for a variety of different reasons. I think he'll be a decent person to have. I think just the way that he presents himself. The second one would be another American, and this person is from a different field, but it's somebody that I had admired throughout my whole teenage years onwards. And that's Michael Jordan, because I'm a huge basketball fan. But what he achieved in his career and how he did it, taking a retirement break and then coming back and being at the top of their game, and just on his approach to all of that is really inspirational to see that. And the third person actually would be my dad, because I never ever knew him. He unfortunately he was killed when I was very, very young, and I never met him. And so it'd be nice to have him around for dinner and see what he's like.
That is three interesting people. I really like that last one, and that was it from us, Sean. So thank you so much for just getting involved. I really believe sharing this sort of stuff will help people, and I think it's just interesting because your route is very different, you could argue, to someone more kind of that traditional practice. So thanks for sharing, and I'll speak to you soon.
Fantastic. All right, Ben, that's awesome.
Lovely.